In the same week, President Trump refused to commit to accepting the results of the 2024 election. He's now saying this about his opponent, President Joe Biden. Quote, "They are running a Gestapo administration, and it's the only thing they have, and it's the only way they're going to win, in their opinion." Joining us now, former Chief of Staff to the Department of Homeland Security under President Trump, Miles Taylor, who's also the author of Blowback, A Warning to Save Democracy from Trump's Revenge. It just came out in paperback. And Ruth Ben-Ghiat, professor of history at New York University, who wrote the book Strongmen, Mussolini to the Present. Ruth, let's just start with you. What do you think of Trump's recent comments that are calling the Biden administration the Gestapo?
So this is straight out of the authoritarian playbook, because one of the oldest talking points of authoritarianism from Mussolini onward is that democracy is the real tyranny. And when Trump, calls the Biden administration something similar to the Nazis and talks about the Gestapo persecuting him, he's activating that talking point. It also plays into the strongman cult of victimhood, which Mussolini and others had as well. And so it makes him and all those who, for example, participated in January 6th, who are now, he calls them political prisoners. And so Marjorie Taylor Greene often talks about the Biden regime. So this is part of this attempt to depict democracy as tyranny and Trumpism as freedom.
Mm-hmm. And Miles, we're now 6 months out from Election Day. In an interview this week, as we mentioned, Trump would not commit to accepting the 2024 election results. And I want us to listen how a potential vice presidential candidate, Senator Tim Scott, responded when he was pressed on the same issue today. Here's what he said.
You voted to certify the election results of 2020. It's the exact opposite of what you said and did after 2020. Why would you want to be on a ticket with someone where there's such a fundamental difference?
This is an issue that is not an issue, so I'm not going to make it an issue.
Well, Senator, will you commit to accepting the election results of 2024? Bottom line.
At the end of the day, the 47th president of the United States will be President Donald Trump, and I'm excited to get back to low inflation, low unemployment.
Wait, Senator, yes or no? Yes or no? Will you accept the election results of 2024 no matter who wins?
That is my statement.
Miles, these people have a hard time answering what should not be a difficult question, which is, will you accept legitimate election results? If you win or you don't win, will you accept them? But apparently it's become a litmus test for the Republican Party and anyone that wants to be Trump's VP.
Well, the hesitation, the faltering in his voice, it's an audition. He's auditioning, and he was thrown a question by the casting directors that he didn't expect. And I think this is something that is sending a very chilling signal, because I'm going to compare it to the last time this happened 4 years ago. And 6 months before the election, Donald Trump was doing the same thing. He was signaling that he might not accept the election results of 2020. But what you didn't hear in that time period is Republican members of Congress lining up behind him. Largely, you heard reassurance from Republican members of Congress about how it would be a free and fair election and there would be a transfer of power regardless. And they mostly dismissed these claims that Donald Trump would try to hold on to power. And they did that right up until the last minute. This time is very different, because they know what Donald Trump is capable of, and they don't want to get on the wrong side of him, because they want to be on his side. They want to be next to him on that ticket. So I've just got to say, I'm very personally disappointed in some of these members of Congress who I've known, like Tim Scott and Elise Stefanik and others, who are hewing to this line to get close to Trump. It's taken something that we thought was a threat to democracy from one man, and it's extrapolated it through the upper ranks of the entire party.
Ruth, what does it say to you? Is there a chilling effect that happens throughout our democracy, the faith in democracy? It is, when I was traveling around for the 2024 primary, you talk to people and they absolutely believe that the election was stolen, even though there is no evidence of that happening, even though that absolutely did not happen. Joe Biden was rightfully elected president. That is just the fact. But what do these types of things do to a democracy?
Well, it's absolutely devastating. And actually, Trump has pulled off something that I, as a scholar of authoritarianism, have never seen. He has gotten tens of millions of people to believe that, he won the election. It's easily verifiable that he didn't. And he did it working in a pluralistic media environment in a democracy. And one of the reasons is the GOP. And everything is about loyalty performances. And that's what Miles was describing. It has a chilling effect. And so all of the people who want to be, vice president, for example, they have to constantly compete against each other to be the most loyal. And in dictator world, this is called divide and rule. You pit people against each other, make them compete to be the most loyal. And right now, the talking point is, will you accept the results of the election? And they cannot answer. They cannot say they will, because that will boot them out. So this kind of loyalty is actually very devastating to all of our institutions of democracy, including the idea of free and fair elections.
Over the weekend, the Trump Veep stakes really heating up. Several Republicans on his VP shortlist hitting the Sunday morning talk shows. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott refusing to say whether he'll accept the election results if Biden wins in November.
Well, Senator, will you commit to accepting the election results of 2024? Bottom line.
At the end of the day, the 47th president of the United States will be President Donald Trump, and I'm excited to give back to low inflation, low unemployment.
Wait,
and high
Senator, yes or
enthusiasm.
no? Yes or no? Will you accept the election results of 2024 no matter who wins?
That is my statement.
That's his statement. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum tried to put a positive spin on Trump's legal troubles.
A filing error is not something that would affect any American. People that are trying to put food on the table and gas in the car, it doesn't affect them. And so it is. This is why the outcome of this trial is not going to change a lot of people's minds. It might actually, in some ways, help President Trump, because it reinforces the idea that the Biden administration is willing to use lawfare to try to attack a political opponent.
All right, panel is back. What do we think, Karen?
Well, you know what's interesting about this? We've always heard, right, that most of folks, it's an audience of one when you're talking about Donald Trump because he's watching. So clearly, they sort of had this was definitely like a Shark Tank weekend, right? Because they had their time with the donors, a little press in the flesh, and then, you get your, TV, let's see how you do. I mean, he's parading all of them, and they know what the stakes are. They know what he's looking for, right? He wants a vice president. It was clear in Tim Scott's answer. Kind of shameful for a United States senator who does take an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America, but Pisha, to not be able to answer a pretty simple question. But again, they both knew with him watching, the stakes are high if you want that VP slot.
Well, and the reality, Aisha, in terms of what Tim Scott's doing there is that this has become kind of one of these litmus test questions that every single one of these contenders is being asked, and clearly Trump is watching what the answers are.
Absolutely, and they know, and Tim Scott knew that he had to say, well, Trump's going to win. He could not say that he will accept anything other than a Trump win. I think that also these, VP candidates understand that they have to be out there, but they can't have too much star power, right? Like, Trump wants someone who can kind of blend in and defend him with the full might of, of their abilities, and also who can just sing his praises, and whatever he does, they can spin it to the best of their ability.
What do you think the criteria are?
It's almost as if Trump hosted a reality show, like in previously, where certain people would, I forget the name, Apprentice or something, and so, but like, it's very interesting, right? Because again, the Sunday shows, they're not doing it because they want to hang out with Jake and Dana, even though we all love to hang out with Jake and Dana. We love Jake and Dana. But like, I kind of go back to what I said before. There's an unprecedentedness where you're changing the channel, and you're seeing a lot of times folks answering the same questions different ways. Every Sunday is kind of a new slate of folks. You saw, again, people all on stage with him. You have that basically that class photo, so to speak, from Saturday night. It is a way where you're having this kind of contest, if you will, play out in real time and in front of a live audience, so to speak.